कैमरा लेके जाओगे ऐसे? कौन सा?
सारे
कपिल भाई है, कपिल भाई ऑन टॉप.
Good morning all. Welcome to the session on women in science and food security. It's my pleasure to welcome the chair of this session, Professor Nitya Rao. Dr. Nitya Rao is Professor Gender and Development at the University of East Anglia, United Kingdom, and Director of the Norwich Institute of Sustainable Development. Professor Nitya brings deep experience and understanding of farmer livelihoods in context of climate variability, economic precarity, and social inequality. Dr. Nitya is a member of the Scientific Advisory Committee of the United Nations Food Systems Coordination Hub and Commissioner for EAT Lancet 2.0. She served for 2 terms on the steering group of the high-level panel of experts to the Committee on Global Food Security. She is currently the trustee of MSSRF. Welcome, ma'am. And I'll now request Professor Nitya Rao to take over the proceedings.
Thanks so much, Namika, and it's a real pleasure to be here with all of you. So this session, welcome to the session, which is on women in agriculture and food security. I think it's a really important session, for as we've been hearing over the last day and a half, that I think this was a very important and very dear to Professor M.S. Swaminathan's, it was an idea which was very core to his beliefs, his values, his philosophies, and also his approach to the evergreen revolution. So I think this session is really not just to recognize that women play an essential role in agriculture, they contribute to the entire value chain, and so on. But at the same time, and also in the in terms of food and nutrition security, in terms of preparation of food, feeding of the young child. So women have kind of roles across the food system, as we've been hearing. That's right from production to processing to consumption. And in this session, we want to explore the critical contributions of women in agriculture and the food system, and also highlight the needs for inclusive policies and practices that recognize and support their central role in building resilient food systems. One of the outcomes I would really like from this session, and to go into the call for action, is how do we build the idea of ensuring gender justice in agriculture and food security, focusing on different dimensions of justice, on recognition of women as farmers, of redistribution of resources, and also representation in decision-making and leadership, and this is very important. So, as many of you know, and I think probably it was mentioned by somebody on day one, that Professor Swaminathan was, or earlier, was responsible for introducing the Women Farmers Entitlement Bill in Parliament in 2011, which unfortunately never got tabled and discussed, and then the end of the Parliament, the bills automatically lapse. So I think this is an idea that in his memory and as his legacy, is something that if we can really push forward. In recognition that 15 years have passed since he brought that bill, so what might be new elements in terms of technology, in terms of innovation, in terms of our knowledge of where we are at and what change we need, I think that would be an excellent outcome of this session. So without further ado, I have a wonderful panel of speakers, and I would like to invite them on stage. Dr. Renu Swaroop, if you would like to come on stage, and I think while they are coming, I will also introduce them, who's former Secretary to the Government of India, Department of Biotechnology, Ministry of Science and Technology. She is a Fellow of the National Academy of Sciences, a member of the Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World, and many others. She's a recipient also of many awards, including the TWAS Regional Science Diplomacy Award, and I think Kuresha is here, that yesterday we had the TWAS MSSRF Award, the YB Chavan National Award 2021 for Public Service, and Lifetime Biotech Policymaker Award, amongst many others. Welcome, Renuji. Next, I would like to invite Irish Bagilat. She's from the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development, based in the Philippines, and Irish serves as the coordinator for Sustainable Agriculture and Women Farmers Agenda within the Asian Farmers Association. This is a regional network comprising 24 national farmers organizations and agricultural cooperatives. And as her coordinator, she coordinates with all these members across 16 countries. So she looks very young, but she's highly experienced and a very good advocate for the rights of women farmers. The next, I would like to invite on stage Dr. R. Rangalakshmi, Executive Director, Area Operations, MSSRF. And of course, Rangalakshmi by training is an agronomist, but she has over 30 years of experience as a development researcher, field level practitioner at MSSRF, working with interdisciplinary research and technologies. But for a long time, Dr. Rangalakshmi also led the program on institutionalizing gender within agricultural production systems and rural development systems, working closely with Mrs. Meena Swaminathan, who set up that area of work within the foundation. Anybody? I think then we have Dr. Anupama Singh, who I don't think is here yet. Oh, you've come. So Dr. Anupama Singh, Joint Director, Education and Dean ICAR. And of course, Anupama, we would like to thank you again for the wonderful production by the IARI students last night. She has, on the life of Professor MSS, she has really, though being a chemistry person, I think she has very diverse interests here. We have one more speaker who's online, and that's Dr. Rahma Adam, who's Senior Scientist, Gender Impact Area Lead for Socioeconomic Inclusion at World Fish, based in Nairobi, Kenya. And she leads the research on gender equality, social inclusion, and aquatic food systems. And she has been actually working all across sub-Saharan Africa, shaping policies and interventions that empower women and marginalized communities, ensuring aquatic food systems contribute to equity, sustainability, and improved livelihoods in the global south. We were meant to have another panelist, the head of country representative of the World Food Programme, Ms. Elizabeth Faure, who also has a lot of experience across the world in Bolivia, Guinea, working with the World Food Programme. Unfortunately, she was here yesterday. She had to do some urgent travel today, but we have a small video recording from her, which we will play at the end. So I would like to start this session now. So welcome to all of you. We'll try and keep it to about 8 minutes per speaker so that we have some time for questions and discussion at the end. We would like to start with a recording from Her Excellency Ambassador Nosifo Jezile, who is currently the chairperson of the Committee on World Food Security. She's from South Africa, and she's the South African representative, permanent representative to the United Nations agencies in Rome. So if you could play the message from Her Excellency Ambassador Nosifo, please. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to address you today at this centenary celebration of Bharat Ratna Professor M.S. Swaminathan, a true giant in the field of food and agriculture. On behalf of the Committee on World Food Security, I wish to express my deep respect for the legacy of Dr. Swaminathan, whose lifelong dedication to ending hunger and empowering smallholder farmers, especially women, continues to inspire us all. As the first chairperson of the CFS high-level panel of experts on food security and nutrition, Dr. Swaminathan helped establish a legacy of scientific excellence and inclusivity. He firmly believed in putting knowledge in the hands of those who needed it most, and in building bridges between policy, science, and the lived experiences of farmers. Today, as we reflect on his vision of an evergreen revolution, one rooted in sustainability, equity, and what he so aptly called biohappiness, we must also renew our commitment to advancing the rights and leadership of women in agriculture. At CFS, we recognize that gender equality is fundamental to achieving food security and nutrition for all. That is why in 2023, our members endorsed the voluntary guidelines on gender equality and women and girls empowerment in the context of food security and nutrition. These guidelines provide a powerful tool to address structural gender inequalities and ensure that women and girls are not just included, but are at the driving force in the context of transformation of agri-food systems. They reflect the same values of dignity, knowledge sharing, and inclusivity that Dr. Swaminathan championed throughout his life. I would like to close this message by introducing a short video that presents these guidelines and the key messages behind them. I hope it inspires new partnerships and action aligned with the vision of Dr. Swaminathan, a vision that continues to light our path forward. I thank you.
A world where every woman and girl can thrive is both a shared vision and a shared responsibility. The global community has endorsed a new set of cross-cutting guidelines, a powerful tool that can turn this vision and responsibility into reality. The voluntary guidelines on gender equality and women's and girls' empowerment in the context of food security and nutrition were developed by the Committee on World Food Security through a collaborative multi-stakeholder process. The guidelines are the first ever globally negotiated policy agreement that make the connection between the policy agendas on gender, food security, and nutrition to enhance coherence and mutually reinforce efforts across sectors. They pave the way for gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls to be embedded in global efforts to achieve food security and nutrition for all. The guidelines focus on a variety of areas, including women's and girls' access to resources, leadership and participation, health, education, and social protection. The guidelines can be adapted to each country's unique context and priorities. Gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls generate significant social, economic, and environmental gains. Greater resilience for families and communities, better nutrition for children and families, and increased agricultural production and food security. Countries can trigger meaningful change by harnessing the collective action of governments, civil society, the private sector, international organizations, and local communities. Now is the time to act. Now is the time for all stakeholders to mobilize resources and implement these guidelines within their constituencies. If we are to accelerate progress to end hunger and malnutrition, let's join forces to empower women and girls, achieve gender equality, and secure a better future for all.
Thank you very much for that message. I had forgotten to mention actually that Professor Swaminathan was the first chair of the high-level panel of experts to the Committee on World Food Security. I would now like to invite Dr. Renu Swaroop to give her talk, please.
I have my presentation on, please. Very good morning to all of you, and thank you very much, Soumya and the entire team, for getting all of us here together to collectively, look at, of course, be part of the centenary celebrations, but also it's given us an opportunity to recall the teachings, the philosophy of Professor Swaminathan, and recommit ourselves to carry this legacy forward. I think that really is the key point that we would like to mention here. Can I have my slides will be coming up? You want me to come there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize that. Thank you so much. I can just move them from here. Okay, so as I said, we are all here today to celebrate the life and legacy of Professor Swaminathan, and this is a wonderful opportunity for us. Nitya has very well introduced the key topic for today's session, and we have been, rightly said, discussing specifically this policy when we talk about Professor Swaminathan's philosophy of pro-nature, pro-poor, pro-women. And I think when we talk about it, clearly there are so many of his teachings and sayings which keep coming up, but this comes up immediately where he did always mention about ensuring social and gender equity in agriculture and in all fields. But this is something that we have tried to keep at the back of our mind, but we would want to see how we take it forward, to see how this gets institutionalized. A recommendation at the end of today, as Nitya said, for a act or a bill to be brought out for women. I think we have to recall that we've been discussing this for many, many years, but still we've not been able to create that momentum where we've actually brought the gender issues have been center staged. We know that women make a lot of contributions. but we still do not recognize them fully or reward them. It's treated as one component of a larger, not as an equal partner for moving ahead. We've been laying stress on gender equity, gender equality, but are these mere words, or have we actually seen this getting translated into action? The UN General Assembly is also announced next year as the International Year for Women Farmers. But I think what is important is, as I said, that we need to now make a conscious effort, but more importantly, we have to see, because it is a matter of concern for us that we've not really moved the needle forward too much. If we talk about what we did 25 years back or 30 years back, are we still today at more or less the same place? We have policies, enabling policies which have been brought out, but I think time now is to move from policy to action. Policies are only as good as they get reflected in the strategies and the actions that get taken. So there's no point in having a lot of policies if we do not have a very well-grounded action plan that's going to help us to take that ahead. We are all aware of the key challenges, and they've been listed and enumerated many times. But what is important for us to reflect upon, and I would like to lay stress on that today, is that we do look at how do we make a difference at the ground level? How do we actually empower our women farmers? How do we bring in an enabling ecosystem for them? But to do that, it's also important that we look at women who are actually into the technology part of it. It's very important to empower women at both ends of that spectrum, at the ground level, but also at the research, cutting-edge research level. And as I go on, I'll let you know why I say that. Because they will be able to adopt if they're given access to those new technologies. Many a times we look at new technology development happening without keeping the gender lens in our minds, and that creates a lot of problem as we move on. We do have technologies, but they don't get adopted the way we would want them to see, because women are not part of our structured training and extension programs. But when I say not part, the needle has moved there, and I'm sure Anupama is going to tell you about how ICR is actually making an effort to see that women become part of those training and extension programs. But these are not generalized statements I'm making. All I'm saying is we are seeing things happening. We've seen things happening over the last 2 or 3 decades, but have we done enough? Have we actually institutionalized it as a mechanism, or is it going to be depending upon the leadership who's driving it, sitting in that organization or sitting at that policy, helm of policy affairs? So that is where we would like to see. So it's very important that we try and bring in practices that we could see more women in leadership positions, because those leadership positions are then important for informed decisions to be taken as to how you engage and involve women, how do you have technologies which are more gender inclusive, how do you actually bring in the participation. We've also seen at the other spectrum that industry, startups, research area, we still do not have the representation that we would want to see. Even after working very hard in that field, biotechnology, the field that I come from, was fortunate to have about nearly 50% women participating. But if you look at agriculture and others, I think in our research, data and statistics, I'm talking about 3 or 4 years back while I was still heading the department, things may have changed now, 35%, maybe we've reached up to that, but is that the 50% that we're looking for? One crucial area where we are still lacking is, because we would want to see technology moving, whether it's to the investors of our industry, startup, or the microcredit schemes as well. The investors have yet not brought in gender equality principles into their funding. And I think that is really what is creating, because it's access to human resource, access to technological resource, but also access to financial resource, which becomes a key aspect. I think that has to be a key recommendation which we must try to take forward as we move on. Empowering technologically, it's important for us to empower them technologically, because then they actually recognize and raise their own demands for technology to reach them. That voice comes in when they know what they can actually get. If they do not know what they can get, they will never raise that voice for asking for what they will get. And again, as I said, it's on both spectrums. Technology is advancing at a very, very rapid pace. It's important that we take this from the lab to the market to the field. It was always Professor Swaminathan saying that stays at the back of our mind, reaching the unreached. How do you actually take these technologies to reach the unreached? So you need to see that each of the components in that value chain, it's a full circle from starting of initiation of a technology to taking it through the translational phase to adoption of the technology and then reaching the market in the field. It's a whole circle. The gender equality, equity principles must be ingrained into each component of that. We have to see that while we empower them technologically, we also make sure that we are allowing or bringing in principles that enable access to these. Many a times we have technologies which get developed, but we don't have mechanisms in which we could get them because, as I said, their participation in either the research or in training or in decision making at the ground level is not sufficient enough for us to be able to take that. One key challenge that we have faced, and we've seen this in many programs that we supported from within the department, is unless women become part of that extension program, we do not really understand what their challenges are. So many times we go with preconceived ideas and perceptions, say this is going to work, but it becomes very different when we see the women participating in it. So if you look at one end of it, and that's the research angle where they have to, it has to be a top-down and a bottom-up approach that you have to fix in. So while we are going to concentrate, and we are recommending concentrating more at the grassroots level, at the ground level to understand their challenges, it's also important that for women in research, we make special efforts to see that there are more women at that angle, because only then will we be able to ensure that the gender equity, equality principles get ingrained into research, translation and adoption. Our base of women in science and agriculture is very, very small. I think that has to really increase. Efforts are being made by the Ministry of Science and Technology, by the ICR system, by all related, but I think that really has now to move into tier 2, tier 3 cities, because that's how they're going to move forward. The second is to build the vibrant ecosystem that encourages them to skill themselves, because they need to skill themselves. And once they upskill themselves, they will be able to easily adopt these technologies. And of course, as I said, the third is financially and socially. These are slides that I'm just going to run through to say, these are our technology landscapes. But when we start looking at numbers, both in terms of how many women are engaged in these technology developments and how many women have actually become recipients of these new technologies, our statistics is not at all satisfying. And I think that is where we have to make sure that in each of these we would want to see more women participation. What we've done from my own ministry is we set up a large number of incubators that we could help new technology development. Professor Swaminathan was the architect of the first women biotech park that was set up in Chennai. On the other hand, we've set up these hubs where you can actually empower women at the grassroots level, but these are only a few numbers that I'm talking about. Can this be institutionalized at a large scale? We've also got another system where we connect with farmers and create biotech Kisan hubs. And out of these large number of over 100 hubs, I think the participation of women is 5 to 10%. How can we increase and enhance that participation? Because that's where the message of what their challenges is comes to the scientists to take technologies back to them. These are, of course, some interesting pictures to show you that we have worked for adoption of technologies, adoption of strategies, and wherever we have done this, it has been successful. But 4, 5, 10 pilots in the country, is that enough for us to be able to move ahead? No. So I would like to conclude by saying, and this is of course the Swaminathan Foundation program on Nutri Gardens. I'd like to conclude by saying and reiterating on some of the policy imperatives that we have. We must ensure that the needs of women while developing new technologies and productivity, there's a special effort on that. That must be ingrained into our special Women for Agriculture program. Make sure that there are mechanisms in which we could give them access to these technologies, and they should not be denied these particular technologies. One recommendation that I would like to make at the end is, we're talking about biohappiness centers being set up. I think in this biohappiness centers, like we had done earlier for biovillages and biohubs, can we have some components which are focused on this gender inclusive components for technology development and technology adoption. And definitely, if we look at empowering them technology and enabling access, we will be able to take forward what the key message is of seeing how we could have our policies moving towards the pro-women, but not just in policy, but making sure they are in action. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Renu. I think, as usual, very insightful, and I think you could have spoken and we could have listened to you for a long time more, and the examples that you have given. But of course, the need to institutionalize and the need to take to scale, and not just having sort of positive statements in policy, but the need to move to action. A very powerful message also about investors and investment to be much more gender equitable. So thank you so much, and I think we will include it in our call for action. I would next like to call upon Irish Begilat from the Asian Farmers Association, please.
Good morning, everyone. So as mentioned by Dr. Nitya, I am with the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development, and I am sitting here representing the AFA members, which are located in 16 countries in the region. And collectively, that's about 11 million small-scale women, men, and young farmers who are engaged in crops, fisheries, pastoralism, and herding. Yesterday was really very inspiring for me. Thank you so much to the foundation for inviting AFA to be in this conference. And I think this movement, the inspiration, the concepts that we have heard so far from day one are very much needed in these times where we are witnessing massive destruction of our natural resources, corporate control of our food systems, inequalities, and also weaponization of food. Last week, with Dr. Nitya, I was also in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, for the UN Food System Summit second stack take. In day 4, at the end of the summit, I had the opportunity to have a walk around Entoto Park, which is few kilometers from the city, where it's 7 degrees at that time. While I was finishing our walk, we met a woman with a bundle of wood on her back. And judging from the amount of wood and also how she was walking with it, one can easily say that the woman is carrying an amount maybe 5 times or more than her actual weight. I also saw a group of women collecting non-timber forest products in the area. These realities further confirmed what we have been talking about, that it is not possible to achieve sustainable, just, and resilient food systems without addressing the challenges and the realities being faced by the women farmers. Because in AFA, or the AFA members are reiterating that women farmers are actually at the nexus, the actual nexus of food, energy, water, and climate. And you can picture it with the description that I have just shared, where women collecting firewood, preparing food for their families, growing vegetables around their house, and taking care of the families. And again, the sight I saw is a concrete manifestation of the multiple burden of women and the lack of access to time-saving technologies that still exist in our communities. And this was also reiterated by the earlier discussion of Dr. Renu. After the conference in Ethiopia, And before coming here, I went straight to the southern part of the Philippines where we are doing a work on women in agricultural cooperatives. In this work that we are doing, we were able to identify concrete ways to address the exploitation of women's time and resources by introducing some, not so expensive technologies that we actually have in our midst. For example, women in cooperatives are actually burdened by the financial processes being done manually. So by introducing digitalization, and women in cooperatives are open to digitalization. And these are affordable technologies, but it's not invested enough, as again was emphasized earlier. So we introduced digitalization. And we have seen how women are actually empowered, saying that it has lessened the time preparing financial reports, and they don't need to get negative feedback from other members because of the errors that they might have done because it's being done manually. So these are very simple, but are actually changing the ways that women are, the performance of women in cooperatives. And in the work that we're doing, we were also able to introduce simple equipment and mechanization that are suitable for the women groups. But I tell you, it's not very easy to do. You cannot find companies who are actually designing this equipment. You have to look for SMEs who are willing to develop, to fabricate this equipment. And we hope that there will be more investment and support for these types of SME social enterprises who are actually willing to go beyond the profit and not only use the profit as their measure for success. So in the work that we did, we went through a process of identifying the resources as well that are within the control of women and use them as the basis for enterprise development. And as I have one example, which was, I think, very obvious, is the use of neglected and underutilized species. We participated in a case study where we look at mechanization and that we find out that positive outcomes came from interventions around crops that are not highly controlled by groups, interest groups, or are not politicized. And these are nuts, the neglected, underutilized species, and fruits. And it's also important that if we work with women groups on these crops, it's important to know that not all value addition are really value addition in terms of income, but some of the interventions perpetrate the cycle of time exploitation and it actually exacerbating inequalities. Also, I wanted to share that in our organization, we focus on strengthening farmers' organizations or collectives or producers' organization because this is the most viable way to ensure representation of small-scale farmers in policy processes. I have been involved in international and regional and national policy processes and have been in CFS, for example, in the UN food systems, in the UNFCCC. And if we do not strengthen these collectives, the recognition will be difficult to get. So this is one of the things that we hope to see more support to farmers' organizations or collectives. And we can see what can be done if producer organizations and women-led groups are enabled. In the exhibit on the ground floor, we can see what can be done if women groups are enabled to perform aggregation, value addition, and if they are given capitalization so they can provide appropriate services and also for them to access institutional markets. I just wanted to go back on representation. And I think there is a very concrete example that was mentioned. It is important to create committees even within farmers' organizations or collectives or agricultural cooperatives because it is within these spaces that we can build the leadership and advocacy capacities of women farmers and women leaders. So even at the local, state level or national level, I hope that these spaces
are actually created, even though we know that in many countries the spaces for civil society is shrinking. But I think as we move forward with the concepts we have been hearing, evergreen revolution, you as policymakers here can push for these spaces to be created. And I have a few more minutes, and I just wanted to, 2 minutes. I just wanted to mention and emphasize what has also been said, that next year, it will be the International Year of the Woman Farmer. So an international steering committee was established and will lead the achievement of several objectives, including amplifying the voices of women farmers, highlighting public policies, investment, social protection mechanisms for women, reducing productivity and wage gap through large-scale investment to strengthen networks and synergies. And we are currently represented in the International Steering Committee through our membership with the World Rural Forum. So women farmer has been defined, and this will be launched. It's defined as women farmers are all women working in agri-food systems, including landless women workers, throughout value chains, including farmers, producers, peasant, family, and smallholder farmers, fishers, and fish workers, beekeepers, pastoralists, processors, traders, and so forth. So I think my call for each and every one of us is to use next year to create that much needed momentum. We work together with research institutions to bring a much needed evidence. No, I don't know what evidence, we have to discuss what evidence is needed to convince our policymakers to become enablers of advancing women and gender equality. And yes, I think I wanted to end that. Lastly, let us really continue to use the framework that we have now and create that social movement for social inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irish. I think it's a really important point. You've also given us a deadline that if you want to do something, move to action. I think attention to the detail, as you described, like mechanization. And in fact, yesterday I was discussing with the Secretary of Agriculture of Odisha, because I'm on a committee where they have actually set up within the Agricultural Ministry in Odisha an engineering, agricultural tools and engineering committee to make these tools, which are on the list for subsidy, especially for poor, small and marginal farmers and tribal farmers, to give 50% subsidy. But most of these tools are not gender sensitive at all. So this committee is trying to look for people to fabricate. But I think this attention to detail is really needed if we want to make change. And we should not just have a symbolic International Year of Women Farmers, but actually put some of this into action. So thanks so much. And can I call now on Dr. Rangalakshmi to please give your insights on transforming gender relations on farms. Also, I think through gender responsive machinery and drudgery reduction technologies. So I think Ranga, again, if you have any repetitive things that others have said, you can go through it quickly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Moving forward, focusing on the time poverty, especially again and again the farm mechanization aspects are coming out, but we should understand the reason behind it and how it is supportive to create a policy so that women farmers benefit from such policies while operating in agri-food systems. So here it is basically a heavy workload, it is paid or unpaid, and little time for them, their well-being as well as upskilling. So in the context of changing leadership, we need to see how this time and income poverty can be addressed together. And it is again, this is closely linked to the division of labor, and it is governed by social norms and customs. In many societies, it is a kind of a strict patriarchal culture, still it is happening. And when we are talking about feminization of agriculture, two different aspects we need to see. One is about the labor feminization and the second one is managerial feminization. In the context of increasing rate of men moving to non-farm agricultural activities, this managerial aspects play a major role. So when we are creating access to different productive resources and services, farm machinery play a major role. When we are talking about women's work, this includes both productive as well as the reproductive work. When we are talking about kind of an actual actions which are happening in the field, this is the study by Nitya and Raju from Koraput and Wardha districts, where women perform 56% of the total work, and of which 75 to 80% are productive agriculture work in planting and harvesting, and 95% domestic work and care work includes. And here the time deficits for care are more intensive for women and from both landless and marginal landed households, and 30% decline during the planting and harvesting seasons. So those seasons play a major role in bringing a kind of an issues related to the well-being aspects. And again, the seasonal aspects we need to bring in. During the season, if we get into any village, we could not able to see any of them at the households. Most of the time they will be in the field and it is involve heavy physical work. Coming to the aspects of intersectionality as well as the geographical connect, we need to understand gender from the lens of location, that is the geography and social identity, and also other important factors like age and land holding. There are many other social and economic factors we can intersect that affect their access to resources and access to machinery services that are very closely linked with income and nutritional outcomes. Then here the time allocation of women in productive and non-productive work, from the drudgery point of view, we need to see how it has impacting livelihood, well-being and agency. So all of us are very clear about the SDG. SDG 5.4 is specifically talking about women's unpaid care and domestic work. And there are, the framework which has 3 R's, which is focusing on recognizing women's productive and reproductive labor, that we need to understand and contextualize to the geography and position. And second one is the reducing workload. As I said, it is for reproductive as well as the productive work, we need to find the solution. And the reproductive work, there are aspects related to access to clean energy, drinking water, child care services. When we come to productive work, it is related to land preparation to post-harvest operations, as women's participation is increasing in the overall agriculture food systems. When we come to the third element of R, that is the redistribution of reproductive and care work, sensitization of men and the creating role models. This is a behavioral change and addressing the social norms. It needs a closer action at the field level to bring change. I'm taking just 2 examples considering the time. One is the custom hiring center. Under the submission of agriculture mechanization, Government of India has been promoting custom hiring center as a mean to, access and availability of farm machinery to the farmers, small and marginal farmers. And when we are seeing the statistics, almost 76,000 community hiring centers have been so far established. This is the data till 2021. Now it may be crossed lakh. But when we really see the actions in the ground, one is whether the availability of women-friendly machinery, considering their gender roles and local cropping systems, or it is governed by the social norms, skilling and the capacity to use the machinery effectively, access at the right time for all the farmers, and the design and development phase of the tool development. That plays a crucial role in accessing the community custom hiring center for the community. And another important role here is the committee. For the management of the center, there is a committee. So whether we need to see how the committee is gender sensitive, and how effective in addressing the needs of women farmers at the local context. And the second example from the reproductive point of view, access to water. So Government of India has a big flagship program, Jal Jeevan Mission, so creating water connectivity for all the rural households. So according to the statistics, almost 90% of the households, rural households, receive the connectivity. But we need to see how effective it is, whether it is in the right time, because women need both domestic water, drinking water, and livestock. Then the quality of the water, participation in the management committee. So these three things we need to now give much focus. Though infrastructure is available, but whether it is supporting women to reduce the drudgery in the reproductive context. So to conclude the talk, basic point is time use studies need to understand contextualized to the different geography, understanding the cropping systems and other socioeconomic characteristics. Second, while implementing the schemes and flagship programs, the gender responsive framework right from the beginning is necessary so that the infrastructure will be rightly put it into practice to reduce drudgery and also enhance women's access to other alternate employment opportunities. And the third point is the redistribution of the task, sensitization and access to machinery services, that is one. And second, to reduce the drudgery and promote champions at the local level, which is primary to bring the behavioral change and address the social norms. So these aspects we need to see how women's participation in agriculture can strengthen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ranga, and also for keeping to time. I think there is clearly a common theme emerging in terms of the need to access technology, but also as Renuji said, and also Ranga, that you can't introduce it later. It has to be part of program development, the design of tools and technologies based on a contextual understanding of actually what are the roles, what are the women doing, men doing, and these are of course crop specific, soil specific, and location regional specific. So thanks very much for bringing out the very important point also of the need for care, because if you don't have care in feeding, I think we won't also achieve an equitable food system transformation. We will now play, if you could play the short recording from Dr. Elizabeth Faure, country representative of the World Food Programme, who I think has some comments on climate smart agriculture in India. So that's again a very important challenge in terms of climate resilience and responding to climate change. So can I request you to please play that?
Yes.
Good morning. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation for hosting this vital dialogue today. It's really such an honor to share insights from the United Nations World Food Programme alongside distinguished colleagues and partners. The theme Women, Agriculture and Household Food Security is foundational to sustainable development and intergenerational well-being. These elements are deeply interconnected, and addressing them holistically is essential for building resilient communities. Let me share a few words about the global context. Climate and environmental crises are worsening food insecurity through extreme weather events, disrupted supply chains, and rising food prices. In 2024, 864 million people faced severe food insecurity, 340 million required humanitarian aid, a fourfold increase in land degradation and climate-induced conflict pose increasing threats, risking displacement for 50 million people by 2030 and a 12% rise in conflict deaths by 20. As the world's largest humanitarian agency combating hunger, WFP plays a critical dual role, saving lives in emergencies and transforming lives through sustainable development. Guided by its strategic plan, WFP is committed to achieving zero hunger by addressing immediate food and nutrition needs, enhancing resilience, supporting national systems, and enabling global partnerships. With a strong focus on gender equality, environmental sustainability, and innovation, WFP works across more than 120 countries to ensure that no one is left behind. In 2023-24, WFP supported over 35 countries with a range of preparedness investments. This included direct operational support to prepare for various climate, economic, and conflict-related threats. Key activities involved early warning analysis, scenario development, contingency planning, and simulations. In 2024, 1.9 million smallholder farmers, 44% of them women, benefited from WFP's market access and climate resilient value chain program. Let me share a few global examples now. In Afghanistan, our integrated resilience program reached over 1 million people, focusing on productive assets, land restoration, and women's entrepreneurship. In 2025, WFP advanced emergency preparedness globally through flood forecasts in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, cyclone readiness in Mozambique, and improved readiness in Cuba with pre-positioned supplies and response centers. Across Africa, WFP supported regional emergency simulations. In Lebanon, WFP expanded community kitchens for emergency meals, and Turkey received assistance to enhance disaster coordination. These are just a few global examples. Let me now shift to women's role in climate adaptation. Gender equality and women's empowerment are central to achieving sustainable food security and nutrition for all. Evidence shows that gender investments lead to better well-being, including better adaptation to climate change, well-being for entire families, including health, education, livelihoods, and nutrition. Climate change disproportionately affects women in agriculture, increasing their vulnerability to displacement, food insecurity, increased workload, and income loss. At the same time, women play a vital role in driving resilience and transforming food systems. As key pillars in food, water, and caregiving systems, women's efforts are crucial. Yet, unfortunately, they are often overlooked in climate strategies and decision-making processes, and even face systemic barriers with limited access to land, markets, finance, and climate adaptation tools. In India, for example, women contribute 55% of agricultural labor, but only own 13% of land and receive less than 5% of institutional credit. Strengthening women's leadership in disaster preparedness, food systems, and resilience building is not just a gender issue, it's a strategic imperative for sustainable development. I would like now to share a few examples from our work here in India at the field level. In India, WFP has multiple projects to empower women in agriculture to better adapt to the impact of climate change. By providing appropriate technology and resources, we can promote more sustainable farming and conservation practices. And by reducing poverty, we can help individuals better adapt to the effects of climate change. In Odisha, our pilot on participatory integrated climate services for agriculture showed that women were more effective than men in disseminating climate information. They actually emerged as community knowledge leaders. In Assam, one of India's most climate vulnerable states, WFP launched the ENACT project in 2024. This is an initiative that supports 17 villages across 3 blocks in Nagaon district, directly reaching more than 300 women-led households and engaging over 3,000 people. Through climate adaptation information centers and last-mile climate services, 1,000 women, 80% women, receive localized forecasts and agro-advisories via ICT tools. We're also happy to share that this successful approach is being further scaled up in 3 states, in Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu, in partnership with with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Beyond supporting the grassroots level transformation, WFP also helps link the village level experiences to the policy level. A symposia series on women farmers that we conducted last year engaged more than 400 stakeholders, including participants from government, academia and civil society. We are thankful to MSSRF for joining us for the third symposium. It was an enriching experience to hear from one of the women farmers herself who was sharing her journey. Some of the key recommendations from the symposia series included first of all, of course, enhancing women's access to credit, technology, and leadership roles is essential and urgent. The second is that integrating traditional knowledge with climate-smart practices is essential, and strengthening multi-sector collaboration for gender-responsive climate action. In Assam, WFP has also been conducting monsoon forums where all national, state and district key stakeholders share the monsoon forecasts and they discuss and plan relevant actions. So in conclusion, women are not just participants, they are leaders in agriculture and climate resilience. Empowering women with information, tools and agency transforms not only their lives, but entire communities. Gender-responsive climate strategies are essential for building inclusive, resilient food systems. As we look ahead, let us commit to centering women in our policies, our programs, and our partnerships. Only then can we build food systems that are not only resilient, but that are just and inclusive. I would like to conclude by saying, when women lead, resilience deepens. When women are empowered, food systems become more inclusive and more sustainable. Let us continue to invest in women, not as an add-on, but as a multiplier for change. Thank you.
I think that's very interesting. I think stressing the importance also of leadership and not just participation, which may be tokenistic, but for women to really have a role in decision making. Now I'd like to call on Dr. Rehma Adams, who's Senior Scientist at World Fish. Rehma, can you hear us? Are you online?
Yes, yes.
That's fantastic.
I'm online.
Great.
Thank you.
So would you like to share your slides or will you just speak, Rehma? You have about 7 to 8 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, it's fine. Let me share my slides.
Great.
Just a second. You tell me if you're able to see the slides.
Yeah. Yes, we can see them. You can put it into presentation mode.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's a privilege to be here today in a celebration of the achievements that have been done by the father of Green Revolution, Dr. Swaminathan. And it's a pleasure to have heard the speakers talking today from the grassroots level, the Asian Foundation, the women representative there, Miss Irish Baglat, and Dr. Renu Swarup, Dr. Renga, WFP representative, among others. So today my presentation basically is focusing on the issues of fisheries, women in fisheries, and how can we really address the gender justice issues in the sector of fisheries and aquaculture. So my title of the presentation is Breaking the Cycle, Empowering Women and Building Resilience in Aquatic Food System Value Chains. I think it's important for the sake of the people maybe who are not working in the gender sector to provide the rationale for gender and social inclusion in aquatic food systems. And then I'm going to take you into the 4 pathways that as World Fish, we have been working for the past almost 2 decades on addressing issues of women's empowerment and gender equality, what we have learned practically as we are trying to address these injustice issues in terms of gender inequalities and ensuring women are empowered who are involved in fisheries and aquaculture sector. And then lastly is the tools that we have developed to address these issues that are research for development and can be applied by a research agency or any development agencies across the world, be NGO or government sector. So in terms of the rationale, I group them into 5. I think we all agree that gender equality and women's empowerment are globally recognized priorities as properly placed and illustrated in Sustainable Development Goal number 5. Secondly, and very importantly for us at World Fish, is that the fact that aquatic food systems, they are intersected by macro and micro patterns of social and gender inequalities and iniquities. And what do we mean by that? The macro inequalities exist even in the formal policies that are currently in place in many of the global South countries, be in Africa, be in Asia or Latin America or in the Pacific where we work. We see that the fisheries and aquacultural policies that are in place, most of them are gender blind. Very few have tried to be gender sensitive. But they really do not address issues of women with regards to the governance of the water bodies, with regards to being given access to resources, capital, finance, among others, to really thrive and make a meaningful contribution to the sector. And the micro patterns of inequality, these exist in the social and gender norms within the societies. They exist in the locale, in the communities, which are really patriarchal systems in nature, and they do not provide a lot of opportunities for some of these women to thrive in the sector. And invisibility of women, this is another important factor. Most of the data that exists within the national agricultural research systems that we work and operate in, they really do not count women as farmers. They are seen as helpers in the agricultural sector. So they are not accounted for their labor contribution. And as well, Fish, we have really been working very hard in the past 2 decades to develop tools that we really feed into the national systems that can be used by the National Agricultural Systems officers as they're trying to understand issues of women, such as the Women's Empowerment for Fisheries and Aquaculture Index tool. We have also tools for participatory researchers. We have so many of these tools that are already out there and that are being used. The Gender Transformative Approaches tool. And lastly, the two last important point is aquatic food systems are really vital for global food security and nutrition. We have seen that in great length in several of the countries we work with. And when it comes to issues of climate change, shocks and stresses that are actually facing most of the coastal communities that we are working in, be in Africa, in Mozambique, be in the Pacific, in those islands that are very vulnerable, we see that, first of all, women are already marginalized to begin with. And now in the face of hurricanes or any catastrophic diseases and heats and stresses, they become over marginalized or double marginalized. So quickly the pathways that we have really been working on, apart from addressing the data issue, is how do we make sure that our women are resilient in the face of these shocks and other, through technological innovations that we have developed. So we all know people who are working in the fisheries and aquaculture sector, for post-harvest loss and waste is huge. 30% of the catches that we see are lost. And since more of these women, more than 50% in each of the countries that we work in, they are in this post-harvest part of the fishery value chain, they suffer the most when it comes to issues of loss and waste, because they don't have the right technologies, especially during heavy rains. They have a lot of fish that they've been able to buy. Now they don't have places to store them. So how do we really address this waste that is occurring at every stage of the fishery value chain? So at World Fish in the Pacific, we have been working with the women's group, providing them with solar freezers because electricity, actually in some places in the Solomon Island, electricity is very scarce. And even when it's available, it's at a high cost. So these solar freezers have really been providing financial benefit as well as other benefits in terms of storing their fish and other food goods that they need, providing them, a stream of income that they've never thought of. And in East Africa, we have been working in Kenya, providing a lot of these technologies: solar tent dryers, fish smoking kilns, solar freezers, fish display boxes. And we have seen a lot of good benefits, financial benefits, social benefits, as well as being able to be linked to market where they can fetch high premium revenue. And the second pathway is inclusive livelihoods and wealth generation in aquatic food system. This is very important to make sure that women are able to get good income, and also our youth, where we are faced, especially now in the global south, or as we can see in Africa, there is a crisis of youth unemployment, which has really led to a lot of distress in uprising in some countries such as Kenya. So what we have been trying to do, as we are trying to make sure that we are including women, youth in each sector of the fishery value chain, we've been doing a lot of training. For example, in Cox's Bazar, we have trained women in proper seaweed farming, green mussel farming, especially, how to also do fish value chain addition, where they could get even much better price and be linked to farm markets. So such as producing fish powder, sardines, and really making sure that their entrepreneurship
Rehma, you have
skills
2 more
are
minutes, so maybe you could speed up to your other pathways. Thank you.
Yeah, and then in Zambia, through the work we have been doing with the NORAD, that have been providing us with good streams of funds, we have been empowering our youth, working with the technical vocational training, how to do aquaculture, how to involve them in the fish input supply chains, and providing them jobs. The third pathway is the gender transformative approaches. These are really necessary to overcome invisible barriers to gender inequality. This is where we are changing the perceptions of how women are seen within their household, within their community, providing them the opportunity to be decision makers within their community, within their household. And these gender transformative approaches, actually, they've been picked up by the Catholic Relief Services and other institutions, and they've been scaled in several countries. This is one example where they've been scaled in 9 countries, 8 in Africa and 1 in Latin America. And the fourth and last pathway is the pathway of inclusive governance. Inclusive governance, this is at the heart of every work that we do, especially when we want to make sure that women have a control of the water bodies, the same as men. They could be allowed to go to have their own fishing boats, be the decisions makers within their beach management units. So how have we done that? We have done that in Cambodia and several other countries where we have trained women as well as their men to become leaders in their community, to have good bookkeeping skills, to be able to get a chance to become secretaries of their communities, among others. And we have seen tremendous outcome. Actually, women who are leaders in those communities, they've been the one who have been able to raise the bar in terms of fundraising efforts in their beach management community and being able to get more people to support their work. And alternative livelihoods, this is also one of the heart of the work through the digitalization and ICTs, providing other means of income for women during those times where we are enforcing those 4 months of ban of fishing, among others. Lastly, where do we head? How do we move forward beyond this pathway? We have so much work that still needs to be done. People who are working in research for development or development agency, issues of addressing youth unemployment, especially young women, to be involved in this sector that still has a lot to offer, and work on leveraging the innovation that already exists in the digital space, as well as financial inclusion and market access, and continuing to innovate and advance methodologies in gender transformative approaches, among others. And one issue I think that I want to leave you with, which we are still working to address, is the issue of sex and gender-based violence in aquatic food systems at the grassroots level and at the policy level. And this is the last slide, which shows examples of the research tools for development that at World Fish and our partners we have been able to develop. We group them into 4: gender inclusive and gender responsive innovation, inclusive livelihood and wealth generation, inclusive governance, and gender transformative approaches to address the deep-rooted issues that needs to be addressed to unleash the opportunities for women to thrive in this sector. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Rehma. I think also to point out the need of the interlinkages between governance, livelihoods, climate resilience, and that all of these need to go together. They need to be built in. The approaches to gender change needs to be built in right from the start. So thanks very much for reiterating that point. So I'll go to my last speaker, Anupama. And if you could sort of make your points in the next 7 minutes or so,
sure.
Then we can have a few minutes left for some questions from the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Nitya. And the speakers before me have, in a very, very comprehensive yet in a very precise manner, they have built up the case for the more emphasis on the technology, more emphasis which is more of the which is more towards empowering the gender, and then towards enabling then other speakers, they have spoken about the enabling initiatives and then the implementation. So these are the 3 major domains into which I have tried to understand that this has been already taken care of, and I would now like to build up the case by focusing on the major stakeholder, that is the women in the major playground of the agri-food systems. And as you'll agree that when we are saying the agri-food systems as a pathway towards the biohappiness actually, and the key concept of Professor Swaminathan, that is the evergreen revolution, for that the major playground of that is in the rural settings across the world. And in the rural settings, the total of that around 22% of the global population is the women in the rural settings. And as my previous speakers have also made a case, as Ma'am Rangalakshmiji, she stated that around 56% of the total workforce there is that share is that of the women. However, the real awareness, that awareness about themselves, about their aspirations, that's something is where we have to actually focus on. Means this is where I would like to say a few words in my next few minutes. So when I will like to take the audience here to the root part of it, that we are talking about developing the enabling ecosystem. But whether our major stakeholder, that is the woman who is engaged in the agri operations, agri food systems, are they oriented enough to aspire for the most evolved, to imbibe that, to actually take that, to actually adapt what has been created for them. So for that purpose, what we have to do is to empower them towards this particular part, that is to have the maximum utilization of what has been created. And once we are near to just even half of that target, our other parts of the SDGs and others, which are more of oriented towards, they take women as the major stakeholders, then all those Agenda 2030 and other things that will be met. I am pretty sure on that. So how to do that? It's not like that, that to educate women, it's tapping them while they are young in those rural settings. So tapping them young means when they are even at the school stage. I am taking the audience towards that taking them to the school stage. When we are, yesterday only I talked to Ma'am Nitya on that part a little bit. When we are saying tapping them young, all, its awareness of to that level is that, that 100% literacy is needed. But there is no orientation. Where and why? Where and then when, why? Then what that literacy is going to take us. So after at the higher education in the school level, wherein, what are the opportunities that are presented to the young girls in the rural settings? I'm not talking about the urban settings, peri-urban settings, about the rural settings. The medicine, the humanities, the arts, or the engineering, but how much of that emphasis is being presented in the right perspective to the agriculture, or just like the medicine is a multidisciplinary field, as the national education policy talks, that we have to give more emphasis on skilling, skill-based professional education. So similarly, the agriculture is not presented, means I won't say it is not presented, there is a need to do it in a more focused manner, in a more mission mode manner, so that by the time our young students or our young girls who are turning up into now women who will be taking then the stakeholdership of sharing the burdens or sharing the liabilities or sharing the operations in the agri-food systems, they are aware that now where we have to go actually to harness our agri-food systems is actually as a agri-industry system. I would say it like that. Because for every inch of the land wherein, we are growing food, that can be, harnessed into the form of industry, but for that purpose, we need a skilled force. And since we have a force which is a women force, which is ready to actually be oriented. So therein, I would make the case is that there is a need to make a policy and then to implement it in a mission mode manner at the ground root level to orient the aspirations of the stakeholder, that is women here, so that by the time they reach up to their post higher education level, they can decide that, okay, I have to go now to become a scientist, I have to know, I have to take care of my land, but I can convert into a profitable business. So from there starts the next level of it, that how many of them are going to go into the post-grad, undergrad level, and then accordingly how that professional competency which is generated for the women force, that is actually transforming itself into the impact at the ground. So this is what is the rationale for me to put up the case like that. Now, as regards that, when we are saying that the aspirations are to be oriented, for that purpose, if I take the case of our Indian scenario, since the audience are from various countries. So for that purpose, Indian ecosystem is quite well set. We are aligning our priorities of the education as well as the extension, because extension efforts are also towards, in a manner that they don't talk only about, bringing in, taking the technologies of the varieties, taking the technologies of the machinery, taking the technologies of the digital agriculture or digital apps. They should also have that component of education as an orientation, skilling of the youth. That also must be there, that also must be included into the extension programs, extension priorities, and then the extension policies. And that has to be integrated with the agri-education framework of the countries depending upon their priorities and depending upon their targets that is set. In our particular case, NARIS case, and in the ICR case, the system is quite well set and it is quite, flexible and it integrates well with the national education policy considerations. So for example, we have here, ma'am, more than 93 disciplines for different undergrad programs in different undergrad, and they have to be, and then there are a number of vocational and the diploma and all. But question is, how many of the girls at the high school level are actually aware about? So that is where we have to put our emphasis and impetus. Thank you very much, ma'am, for giving me the opportunity.
making a very important point about school curriculum and school education, and we really need to create this awareness. If we talk about youth not engaging with agriculture, it's not enough to do it once they have grown up. We really have to create that enthusiasm at the school level. So thanks to all my speakers. We have about 5 or 6 minutes, so I'm happy to open the floor for a couple of short comments or questions, and then I will give an opportunity to Dr. Narayan Hegde. Maybe just a minute, please.
I would like to compliment all the speakers for bringing very specifically the role of women in economic development. In terms of biohappiness, women play a very important role, particularly with respect to the imbibement of the culture, values, hygiene, sanitation, bringing discipline in the community like alcoholism, drug or abuse. These are very important role as part of the women development. However, I think in this forum also we need to bring that emphasis so that they play a very important role. Today you see day by day, if these things are missing in the society, money alone will not bring happiness. I know everybody is aware of it, it's inbuilt, but I request this to be brought into the recommendation, highlighted. Thank you very much.
Speaking on economic empowerment.
Who's speaking?
Ma'am, I'm here.
Okay.
Speaking on economic empowerment, the gender disparity in wages always exists, actually. This affects women's motivation to work in agriculture. We all know about this. Like how we can overcome this gender disparities through policies and also to ensure women representation in agriculture and strengthen their participation. And also how we can enhance their knowledge through accessing digital tools to the women farmers.
Thank you very much. Yeah. We can take one here and then in the middle, third row, please. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Vijay Javande. I am from Wardha, and Wardha is mentioned in one slide here. The wage disparity is mentioned already. But the policy decisions are not discriminating between male and female. Even it is the discrimination is between female and female also. The organized sector, there is a policy of 26 weeks pregnancy paid leave. Then why not this for the farmers? Because when we are talking about the young girls to come into the farming, if this type of policy differences are there, how can young girls will be promoted or will be motivated in agriculture? So I think can we not take this decision to the policymakers from this forum? Thank you. Thank you so much.
The third row, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. A.C. Kulshrestha. I am not from pure agriculture. I am from social science, and I am a statistician by training. And I just recall that in 1993, at that time, Ms. Devaki Jain, Indra Herve, etc., they were holding at Bangalore. It was, I think, Devaki Jain's palace, where we were located, and they were all women.
Ask your question.
So
because
the point is that they wanted a contribution in the GDP by gender. So I was sent there, and I listened to all that. I told them GDP is not something by gender. GDP is estimated from goods and services. But in the production of the goods and services, it is the man and women both. So bifurcate on that and give. And I think I wrote a paper, and a couple of papers I published. I can make available to you. And besides that, there is a concept of extended GDP, where the work of women, which is not considered as a work, which is done in the home, the domestic, that also is brought out. There are very interesting findings. Cannot tell in 1 minute, but I will...
Thank you very much. I think this idea of the extended SNA in the system of national accounts is well recognized.
Hello.
Let us go to you.
First of all, thanks to all the honorable speakers for providing such valuable insights. I just want to briefly add to Renu ma'am's suggestion of building biohappiness centers, that deploying women at this very stage in the biohappiness centers to lead, teach and assist other women in skill enhancement would be the very first step
towards and a more authentic step towards fostering gender equity. Thank you.
Hello.
I want to suggest this, that through Manrega, 26 weeks minimum wages should be paid for 2 deliveries, 26 weeks, direct to their account, DBT. That is what I want to suggest.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will give some 2-3 suggestions out of my field experience. As all of we know that women have so many contribution and participation in agriculture, and all the gender issues also we are aware of that. But so many strategies also we have developed. But in a real sense, in a real grassroots level, when we ask any woman to come forward for any small meeting or program, they have to take permission from their family male members, from their community. So due to our socio-culture, as per our socio-culture, we have to create first the gender-sensitive social climate, gender-sensitive social climate, and we have to sensitize all the stakeholders at all the levels, including our general public, the policymakers, the researchers, and extension functionaries. And second thing, the women are lack of advisory services, extension information, dissemination of any information like that. So the village level para extension worker, female para extension worker model is very much successful. It has been developed by ICR Shiva, Bhubaneswar, and it is also tested in field level. So those para workers will work as a bridge between the farm women and the researchers, and their problems and solutions in both ways will be solved. So that model, para worker model, can be implemented and we can adapt. And so many schemes and projects have been developed by government. But very few women are getting information about that. So at each step, each level, it has to be a concurrent evaluation to be made to see how much benefits the women are getting out of those schemes and projects. And last thing, the engineers, agri-engineers, for example, women participation very high, particularly in transplanting, which is very much drudgery prone, women were doing manually. When a transplanter was generated by the agri-engineers, it is not fitting to the women due to their physiological parameters. So if they will be sensitized, as women are the farmers, so that they will be sensitive to develop the gender-friendly tools and implements. Thank you.
Hello.
Sorry, I think it's so good to have so much of questions and discussion. Please do give your suggestions. The panelists are here, we are here. We will take it on board for the call to action. But I just want to give 30 seconds to each of the panelists to just, give any response to any of the comments or questions that you have heard. I'm really sorry, we are taking 5 minutes into your lunch break, but please, I would like to give a time to the panelists. So let us start with you, Ranga.
The question related to how digital technologies can be taken to women farmers. So there are many good examples right now available in India at different levels, starting with how the content can be created, the learning process can be facilitated, different tools can be mobilized around farmers. So definitely there is a good chance to take it forward, and there are pilot programs to scaled up programs, experiences are also available. Thank you.
Just intervention in continuation to Madam Rangalakshmi ji. As one of our audience, they asked about how it can be done. So as it can be done in a participatory mode. More of the women in those settings, they should be rather asked that what are the difficulties and how it should be done. What is actually what you are wanting. So that I think that is also going to be more of a realistic kind of technology development rather than, just offering them that this is what and you adapt to this. So this is another thing. Another thing is, madam, regarding, the taking the permissions from the opposite gender in the family. Of course, this is true for almost all households, to some extent. So for that purpose, I think, again, my point that it is the education brings more respect, education brings more accounting, education brings more stakeholdership. I think I will emphasize upon that only. Thank you very much, ma'am.
I think the crux of what we've got from even the interventions from the audience is clearly one aspect, and it reiterates what all of us have said earlier, that it's important to build strategies which can actually be implemented and show effect on the ground. No point in just having policies which do not, and that needs to be monitored through some sort of a monitoring framework, which we must ensure or recommend that gets ensured. The second is the education and skilling, which is key and important to be able to bring in that awareness and education right from the young students to even those women who are at the ground or to women who are developing technologies. And the last key recommendation, which again gets reiterated, is let's not do anything small at the moment. Let's do it at scale, because unless and until we do it at scale, it's not going to show the impact. And as I said rightly, we are really not going to move the needle forward. So that should be our effort collectively, and that should be a recommendation to go into the biohappiness centers. Thank you.
Yes, I am very much impressed with the eagerness of everyone to really contribute in this dialogue. And there's richness, in this room, and I'm sure there's richness beyond. So I think my last is to create more platforms for dialogue. And let's use the dialogue, because in the end, institutions, policies, it's created by us. So let's create that dialogue platform. There's so much knowledge, so much solutions already in our hands.
Yes, thank you. I mean, this has been really enriching, and we went through talking about, the higher level committee of food system. We talked about UNFSS. We talked at the grassroots level. We talked about policy. We have talked a lot, and
Rehma, don't summarize. Just give me your 30 seconds takeaway, please.
Thank you. Yeah, the 30 seconds takeaway, I think from the last person who was asking the question about how can we address this information flow gap at the grassroots level, where we are seeing our women not getting the information about the technologies. For me, that question speaks to the heart of the work that we do in research for development. How can we really strengthen working with extension services people, extension system that exist in the countries that we work. In some countries, you find that there are very few extension staff. And in some countries, they have, sort of a decent number. So I think in order to reach for all these countries that are at different level in terms of the number of officers of the extension, we need to realize there are women collectives exist in the communities that we work, in the countries that we work. So how can we really work with these women collective, women self-help groups, women cooperatives, whatever they call them, that exist within those communities, so that information reach to these collectives. So if the extension is not able to reach them, then they could see a way to work with the secretaries of those women association, invite them to inform them about these technologies, about this new information, about this new knowledge in agriculture and fisheries. And that's the best way.
Thanks so much, Rehma. I think it's again reiterating a very important point that we have to start from the bottom up. I think collective action, something that Irish mentioned, that institutionalization, ultimately education, generate the demand, generate the empowerment on the ground. So these women farmers are actually able to access the resources and the technologies that exist. It's really about addressing that unequal power relations. I don't have time to summarize the discussions, but thank you everybody, all my panelists, and all the audience for your very useful suggestions. And I know there were many more, so please send us your suggestions. I just wanted to say that Renu had reminded me also, and as Irish said, next year is the International Year of Women Farmers. I think we have a couple of months to work on something to build an agenda and to take it to the International Year of Women Farmers in terms of very concrete suggestions of how do we scale up. We've been talking about this for a very long time. We are all aware of the rationale. Nobody is challenging that, but we really need to do something about it. So thank you to everybody and my panelists. And I was told that before finishing, there is a memento for all the speakers. So please, could you bring the mementos?
30 seconds.
Is somebody announcing? Or are you going to announce, Anamika? Are you announcing, or shall I just give? You can announce the names.
I'd request Professor Nitya Rao to hand it over to Dr. Renu Swaroop. Dr. Irish Baglat. Dr. Anupama Singh. And Dr. Rangalakshmi. And can I request Dr. Renu Swaroop to hand over the memento to Dr. Nitya Rao?
I have the pleasure of doing that. Come, Nitya, for an extremely well moderated session.
Thank you so much. Sorry? Group photo.
We'll come in front, you also in front.
Please come. I'm sorry, Rehma, that you're missing her. We should tell her. Apologize to Anamika that she's missing
No problem.
Oh, she come on the screen. Okay, great. Just stay on the screen, Rehma. For the group photo, you'll join us on the screen.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. We'll now break for lunch. We'll reconvene in the same hall for the keynote lectures. Thank you.
Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
Coordinated very well.
Thank you. Thank
and
you
I was
so
happy
much.
to see all of them.
Yeah, I know.